we need some positivity on this Friday. We are in a tough spot right now, bud. How are you?
Yeah, you know what's positive? I'm going to head over to the beach here in about a half hour and do my prep for the Kiprio show. So I'm in a great frame of mind. I mean, but that's what happens when you get old and retire. It's great.
Just work on that golf
I
thing, eh, Mac?
I heard my wife at Christmas gave me a strength coach. She hired a strength coach, and I think between the two of them, the bastards are trying to kill me. So I hurt my back. I hurt my back lifting weights. So now I'm in physio 3 days a week trying to get the spasms out of my back. So I'm just going to slow it down. But I get spasms when I think about the Leafs, if the truth's known. But anyway, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm reading names for this job, and I'm thinking like interesting names, and I'm thinking, okay, do they know where they really are? Do they know what really is the problem with this team and organization? It's going to be really interesting to watch the retool, rebuild, whatever they decide to do. And I was looking at, think about the organizations in the NHL that are the best NHL organizations. And you go down the list. You go Colorado, Dallas, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Montreal, Vegas, Bruins, Panthers, Anaheim. When you look at all those teams, even the Sharks with Greer and a young coach, the one thing you look at about every one of those organizations is they have great, solid management. That's what they have. Think about Verbeek under Yzerman for a long time. I think he's done a really good job with the Ducks. And Sweeney's battled back after getting some criticism, but him and Neely are back. They look like a good team. Colorado with Sakic and McFarland. I mean, they're a good combination there. Kekalainen goes into Buffalo. They seem to have turned it around. I just, management is so important. It really is. And this isn't the time for like play GM. This is a time when they've got to be serious about this position and who's going to get the job. And I know they've had a search committee going, or an agent, flogging his people. So look, it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome is.
Yeah, they hired a firm, Mac. They hired a firm, so they're on the right path here.
No, they hired an agent. They didn't hire a firm. They hired an agent.
Good point.
Who's got all the Gil Scott used to be the guy that had a lot of coaches, and now this guy's come in and sort of taken over. And he's, I met him. He's a buddy of Elliott's. He used to come in and watch games with us at Sportsnet every once in a while. And look, he's a good guy. He's got good coaches, good management people. But just have a look at what's happened to Vancouver. Think about the Canucks and where they were when Travis Green had them in the playoffs. And you say, and I'm sitting there saying, okay, Pettersson, Quinn, Horvat, all these young guys that were ready to take off, and look where they are today. Like a complete disaster. They're a little bit like the Leafs, but I think the Leafs are in better shape right now. So, picking the right GM is going to be critical, guys. It really is. And I don't know who it's going to be. I have no clue. I don't think I saw your name. I saw your name in there, Jay. And I mean, look, I know you've got a lot of experience, but I would start off, if I was you, I'd go to the American League first and maybe, spend a little time in the American League, or go and get your master's in analytics. That's what you really need.
That's going to happen.
I keep hearing about Carolina and the great things that are going on in Carolina. And yeah, they've done a good job there, but they just never win in the playoffs. And they got one of the best coaches in the league,
True.
So there's no magic formula. I mean, I love the Sakic-McFarland combination. And, CMAC worked with me for 10 years in Columbus. And he told me how it works there. I mean, they do all the prep on every big deal. They do all the prep. They do the video scouting. They do the regular scouting. They do the analytics. And as a group, they look at the player intently. Then they take it to Joe for the final decision. That's how it's worked in Colorado since Joe Sakic and CMAC have been there. And, so, analytics has become a big part in every organization. I mean, it was a battle for a few years. The scouts were fighting it. Now it's become, every organization, if they're not doing it and they're not using it, they're idiots. So to me, everybody's using it, and there's still mistakes made. So anyway, I'm rambling on, but
yeah, it's all right. You mentioned like you want someone to come in who hope they know what they're doing, and some of the front runners to take this job are kind of some obscure dudes. Would you lean maybe? Do you think they're missing the mark on not maybe promoting one of their 7 AGMs, like maybe a Shane Doan who's been watching this thing unfold the last handful of years? Maybe he has a strong idea of like, this is what's wrong. I see it every single day. Or do you think it's better to go out to some outsider and just hope he knows what the problem is?
Like Keith talked about structure, and the way it should run is hire a president of hockey ops. Hire a president of hockey ops and do a really unbelievable, thorough search on who that president is. And, a guy that's got great experience and has been in the league recently. I don't mean a guy that's been out of the league for 14 years. I mean a guy that's been in recently. And let him hire the general manager. And then let the general manager decide in consultation with the president of hockey ops who the coach is going to be. Is it going to be Craig or is it going to be somebody else? That's structure where you let the people you hire do their jobs. So first of all, hire your president of hockey ops, and whoever that is, make sure he's got a ton of experience, not some little that you've played games, like video games, like this isn't GM mode where you go on NHL hockey and you hit the button GM mode and you can make trades and you can do all the things. It's not GM mode, it's real GM. So that's what I'd like to see happen, and start with your hockey boss, who is the president of hockey ops.
Do you have any
now,
intel
Dale?
on Sonny
It's funny. A guy just asked me to put his name in today. I had coffee with Dale Talon, and Ron Hextall and Jeff Rimmer here, and Rimmer told us that Bobrovsky told him he could be a GM. I said, well, you should put your name in for the Toronto job then. If Bobrovsky told you could be a GM, you should put your name in. He's going to be a Hall of Fame goaltender. I'm kidding, but seriously.
I know. How about Talon and Hextall? I know you said you talked to them. Do they have an interest in a job like this?
Dale thought he had the job in Vancouver a few years ago, and for whatever reason, it fell up. He was scheduled to fly to Vancouver to accept the job, and all of a sudden he got a call saying no, it was out. Something happened, and Jimmy Rutherford got the job. So I think he's pretty. Look, what hockey guy wouldn't want the Toronto Maple Leaf job? Seriously, what hockey guy wouldn't want it? Because it's still the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I go back here a bit, but look what Montreal did. They hired Gorton, who who was a guy that worked for the Bruins for a long time. Then he went to the Rangers as GM and did a real solid job with the Rangers. Then he goes into Montreal as president of hockey ops, vice president of hockey ops to start. Now he's president of hockey ops, and he hires Kent Hughes. And all of a sudden they've got a great model set up there between the two of them. That's what I'd like to see in Toronto, something along those lines.
Now I've been bitching and moaning for a while now at how, the one thing they could get out of this disaster is a top 5 pick in a heavy draft where they desperately need some new blood to come in and some high-end blood where there's none to be seen. And, I'm watching the last 10 games and they've done absolutely nothing to help themselves. And then Pelly puffs his chest out, wow, we're above that. Absolutely not. We're winners. It's like, look around you. You have a chance to rectify or take something out of this season, and they just seem to refuse to, and it's coming down to the wire, and it's terrifying to watch who Boston could get and how that player will probably haunt the Leafs the next 15 years. What are your thoughts on what they've done down the stretch when they know the season is over as far as playoffs?
Yeah, look, it's that pick has haunted them all year. If the truth was known, I mean, that trade, that pick has haunted them. At Boston are still talking about the mitten, and I mean, it's haunted them. And look, unless they fix their back end, Jay, unless they get a group on the back end that can move the puck out of their zone, that can transport the puck, that can make plays at the offensive blue line to create, you have no chance. If you don't get 150 points from your back end, from your defense core, if you typically don't get 150 points from your back end, you don't make the playoffs in the NHL. That's sort of a something as a model. So you need defensive guys, you need offensive guys. They don't have. I mean, Tanev is. I love Tanev, but he's injured all the time. Love McCabe because of his character. I mean, they need this blue line revamped. So you can talk all we want, but it needs to be revamped to a today's type of blue line. And that to me is their biggest problem. You can fill in holes up front, in my opinion, but the back end is a real issue. And their goaltending is fragile.
Don't you think giving a
Well,
D-man a top 5 pick with a new age type of mentality would help them?
What I'm talking about is if you had the top 5 pick and you end up with a top young defenseman that has a potential to become a real franchise defenseman. The Schaefer kid is unbelievable, but there's all kinds of them around the league. You look at the way what's happening. Why is San Jose coming on? They got the young defenseman Will Smith there. Why has Buffalo turned it around? Because their young defensemen have finally come into their own. And because if you don't have top young defensemen that are going to develop into stars, you have a tough time winning in the NHL. And the only way you typically get them is through the draft. Vancouver has to give up Quinn. I mean, how devastating is that, And then my buddy Tommy Fitz doesn't have the cap room to get him, so he gets fired. I mean, it just, So anyway, it's great to say we're going to retool, but how do you retool your back end? Explain that one to me. Who's out there that you can get to retool the back end? Ekman Larson, you like McCabe, you like Tanev, then you sort of stop. Where are we going next here? They're the bottom end. They're your 4, 5, 6. So it's complicated, and that's why that I hope Keith finds the right number one guy to start building the franchise. And that's the president of Hockey Ops, because he is the guy that's most qualified to pick the new GM. Not Keith, not the agent, but the president of Hockey Ops is the guy that's hopefully going to be best qualified to hire a coach. I mean, lots of people, we criticize Kyle Dubas. I happen to like Kyle. And Kyle, the cupboard's bare because he was desperately trying to win with this group. But I was talking to George McPhee. George phoned me the other day. He said, I'm out behind your place walking my dog. Get your dog and let's go for a walk with our dog. So I'm with George and we're talking. And he said, who the hell is this coach in Pittsburgh? Where did he come from? And he said, we said, I remember him when he was in the USHL in Chicago. And I remember he was assistant with the Rangers. And he was assistant with Nashville with Laviolette. I remember him there. But obviously Dubas did his homework and found a real good coach that has to coach Crosby and Malkin and company. Not an easy job. I interviewed for the GM job in Pittsburgh. I was at Sportsnet. It was probably 8 years ago. And Jimmy Rutherford was interviewing me. He was the GM in Pittsburgh. And he said, what are you going to do as our GM when Crosby and Malkin tell you to F off on the bench? What are you going to do? That's what he said. I said, well, I guess I was interviewing for the coaching job. And he said, what are you going to do if they tell you to F off? And I said, they wouldn't tell me to F off. Because I would have stopped it before it ever got to that. I would have figured out what I was going to do on the bench before it got to that. You know that, Jay, from on the bench. Some coaches just go right to the limit. But so, I mean, give Dubas what the point I'm making is Dubas obviously did a lot of homework on this guy, and he hired a hell of a coach, and he's brought a franchise back that everybody picked as a bottom feeder, including myself. And look at the season they've had, and it starts with the coach, in my opinion.
I want to go there next because watching the Leafs games lately, I don't know what to think about the future of Craig Berube. In fact, I think it was really bizarre that he's equipped enough, Keith Pelley to fire the GM, but not the head coach. Is there any world, do you think, where Craig Berube's back next season? I just can't see it, Mac.
You know what I mean? It's really, obviously Craig. Look, he did a good job in St. Louis. He's paid his dues. I mean, he's been an assistant for a long time. He's in the minors. He's paid his dues. But I've never seen an organization that brought in, 10 new guys this summer? And guys, not one of them worked out. Not one of them worked out. Now, is that the GM's fault? Is that Craig's fault? All I know is none of them worked out. Including Dakota Joshua and Waugh and all Michelli picked up some points. I mean, none of them came even close to what people had hoped they might be. So, I think it's going to be really tough for Craig, and I like the guy. I really like him as a guy, and I don't like to see him lose his job, but I think it's got to be a fresh start. I mean, obviously, Nylander and Matthews, I mean, the seasons they had, they got to figure out what's going on with those two guys and what's going to make them tick, because they've got to be a ton better if this team's going to have any chance next year to improve.
Yeah, they sure do. What's your prediction here on the weekend? What was probably slotted when they made the schedule to be a really big game is a really big game for a completely different reason here. What are your expectations here as they limp across the finish line, but that draft pick is on the line?
Do everything they can to get the draft pick. Everything they can possibly do to get the draft pick. That's what should be top of mind.
Yes,
Are they aware? They are aware. They are aware of that situation. Are they? I know the players don't care, but
you wonder.
The players don't care.
You wonder sometimes watching them.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, they got to try to do everything they can to get the pick, but it may be a little late for that.
Yeah, it's getting down to, it's important this weekend what happens in some of these games. I just wanted to leave you with asking, do you have any intel on Sonny Mehta? I know he's been sort of linked to this job. We talked a bit earlier on about analytics. I agree with both of you. I think there should be a president and a GM working in cohesion together. But is there anything you can tell us on Sonny Mehta and his upbringing?
I thought it was Sonny Bono that's name was out there. But,
no,
I know. I would know Sonny Bono better than I would know Sonny Mehta. I know he's the analytics guy in Florida, and I mean, look, they've won, and I get a kick out of seeing how he is the reason they've got all these players. He's the reason they got Forsling. No, Bill Zito, I think, was Forsling's agent. I think that's how. I mean, Jones, he's the guy that got everybody there in Florida. I think Bill and Rick Dudley and Les Jackson and all their hockey senior advisors and Paul Fenton, I'd say they were heavily involved in the acquisitions with Bill Zito. I don't know that Sonny, I guarantee you he would have done the analytics work on them, which is really important. It's really important. But I can't believe he's the guy that was the instrumental in acquiring all those guys. When I look at the management team there, Bill Zito's is a big part of the management team, but Dudley's experience, Les Jackson's experience, Paul Fenton's experience, and they're all underneath Bill, along with Sonny. So good. It's a good organization right now, a very good one.
You shoot from the hip, Mac. Just to wrap, who's your president? Who's your GM? Who do you think they should go after here? You've mentioned a lot of names today. Give me an answer. You're Keith Pelley. Play the role of Keith Pelley for us, please. Or the firm, or both, or agents.
I'm not. I worked for Keith, and I really like Keith, but I'm going to leave that to him. I mean, there's lots of really good people out there. There's lots of really good people out there, and I just think that going with an inexperienced guy is really dangerous. And I think they've got to find the most experienced guy. And it may be asking teams for permission to talk to people. And, but I don't know who it should be. I guess I would say Kyprios or Jay would be the top of my list.
Someone's dicking around at Bet365 is my guess.
He's only plus 5,000 now for Rosehill to be the next GM of the Leafs. So we'll see what happens. No, Mac, can't thank you enough, man. Great stuff, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Take care, guys.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.